The following program contains shocking portrayals of action. If you suffer from cowardice, Randall may not be right for you. Check with your video game supplier.
Speaking the truth when others hold their tongues. Wrestling for justice with left-wingers and crocodiles. The only talk show host who writes. The man who creates social tension just by walking into the room. Randall Terry.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Just leaving England. Got my assault weapon of choice. By the way, this is a multi-purpose assault weapon. You can kill the bad guy and then give him a proper Christian burial. The truth of the matter is, we need to ban these. Obama, please save me from the shoveler. Please. All right. The truth of the matter is, we have a great program for you today, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to look at statistics from not just America, but Russia and Brazil. We're going to play the clip where Joe Biden is announcing that Obama thinks he might become a dictator when it comes to our Second Amendment rights. He is going to cause big problems if he's not careful. And we're going to bring out real firearms. So, number one, moms, dads in the room right now, if you've got small children, at least for the next segment, I suggest you make sure they're not in the room. Then when we bring out the real weapons, that would be when you bring them back in the room. We'll have a little gun safety course and we'll do some pop quizzes over what is or is not an assault weapon. That and so much more. A great clip from Hank Williams Jr. and of course, a word of wisdom from Jihad Granny.
Allah Akbar. People, listen, we have real enemies. I want you to think of good Muslim Representative Ellison in Minnesota. He had to put up against opponent Gary Boyclair, who showed evil images and said things that were false. Oh, would Muhammad be there? Oh, just wait until Muhammad gets his hands on Gary Boyclair.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Voice of Resistance. It is I, your servant, Randall Terry. I want to talk to you today, part 2 of a series on your right to own weaponry. Now, if you missed yesterday's show, go and see it online. It is critical. It has history and theology in it regarding the right of self-defense and the right to own weapons to do that, all right? So if you have to go online, look for the show that aired on January 10th, all right? Again, I want to suggest, at least for this segment, that if you've got small children in the room, you ask them to scoot out. My wife and I were talking last night, and we both agreed we would rather have our children see firearms, no problem, they see them all the time, learn proper gun safety, and even have them see some of the horrific images involving Holocausts, such as the Jews being killed in Nazi Germany, or the horrific slaughter that happened in Rwanda or in Cambodia, or the killing of babies in America. We'd rather have them see those two items because one involves self-defense, the other involves horrific atrocities and injustice that we are raising them to oppose, than for them to be surrounded with common household items and have it be in their brain that these are murder weapons, Mommy and Dad. In other words, it seems so destabilizing to my wife and I. We said, let's not even talk about that with our children around. Agreed? Agreed. All right. The first principle of something is the heart and soul of any argument or conclusion that comes from that first principle. In other words, if you believe that the state is the ultimate master and that the state can regulate free speech or the freedom to own a firearm, at that point, you provide arguments and you come to conclusions that uphold your premise or your first principle. The first principle that we are functioning under is that we have a God-given right to defend ourselves from evildoers on our own property, but also from the government. And later on in this program, I'm going to discuss that at length. But I want to recap and make a couple of interesting points regarding these items. What you have here are assault weapons, all right? This is an assault weapon. This battery, a common assault weapon. Scissors, used to murder. A wife murdered her husband in England, plunging her sewing scissors into his chest. Shoelaces, a man and a woman arrested in Texas for strangling a pawn shop owner to death. Every single item that you see here was used to commit a murder. Well, I mean, not actually these. The ones that were really used are tucked away somewhere in a district attorney's office. But every single one of these items was used either in America or in England or in Russia to commit a horrific, violent murder. Men killing women, women killing men, men beating each other to death or beating someone to death with a baseball bat, etc. Do we want to ban these? Do we want to have people get a permit to carry a flashlight, a shovel, a belt, shoelaces? In prison, all right, in a slave labor camp, you can't have these things. I've actually been to jail many times, spent over a year of my life in various jails and prisons because of my peaceful opposition to the killing of babies. They take your shoelaces, okay? They take your belt. You don't get to have a flashlight. You certainly don't have a wrench or a knife or a rock. And murders still happen in prison. And speaking of prison, let's talk about Russia. People whine and complain about all the murders committed by guns in America. In Russia, you can have a shotgun. You have to have permits to have a shotgun. And then after 5 years of owning a shotgun and being a part of some sportsman's training group, then you can buy a rifle. You are never allowed ever to own a handgun. Zero. No semi-automatic weaponry with a handgun, all right? They do allow you to have a rubber shooting air gun, a rubber bullet shooting air gun for self-defense. Russia's murder rate is 10.2 per 100,000. That's per capita. America's is 3.9. Russia has a 2.5 times higher murder rate than America, but they have incredibly restrictive gun laws. In Brazil, every single gun has to be registered. You have to be 25 years old to have a gun. You have to pay a fee every 3 years. And their murder rate is 20. Did you hear that? 20 per 100,000. Ours is 3.9, Brazil's is 20. The point is simply this, that restrictive gun laws don't make the murder rate go down. It's a fallacy. It's a lie. All right? And when you can have every single one of these items, these common items, be used in a murder, as they are used in Russia or in England or in the nations with the most restrictive gun laws in the world, you have to come to grips with the fact that murder is going to happen. It's a tragedy. But if somebody is coming at you with a frying pan and you just happen to have a pistol in your pocket and you draw down on him, guess who wins? The dude carrying the pistol. When we come back, I am going to play the clip from Joe Biden's call for tyranny, in which he threatens that Obama is going to act with or without Congress. I think that they need to take great pause and heed the warning of a lot of good people, that that is the stuff that revolutions and convulsions are made of. I'll be right back.
Napoleon used to come into Randall's office waving his arms in the air like a madman. And Randall finally got fed up and said, "Look, General, if you really want to have respect and mystique, put your hand inside your coat like this."
Friend, you need to get this book. We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you. Friend, you need to get this book, We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy, and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you.
A voice that thunders from the mountain. Just look out for the lightning. Yes, it's Randall Terry. Aha!
Welcome back to the Voice of Resistance. I'm Randall Terry. We're going to play for you a clip from Vice President Biden's speech that he gave the other day, and I want you to listen closely to the words. They are insidious. And then I'm going to talk to you about what is really at stake here. Andrew, play the clip.
Every once in a while, there's something that awakens the conscience of the country. And that tragic event did it in a way like nothing I've seen in my career. So we're here today to deal with a problem that requires immediate action, urgent action. And the President and I are determined to take action. I want it clear to the American public that on behalf of the President, we're reaching out to all parties on whatever side of this debate we fall. If the President is going to act, or executive orders, executive action that can be taken, we haven't decided what that is yet, but we're compiling it all with the help of the Attorney General and all the rest of the cabinet members, as well as legislative action we believe is required.
All right. There's two things that I want to point out to you about this. One is that Biden spoke of an awakening of the conscience. And two is that he floated in a very Machiavellian manner the fact that Obama and Holder, that tyrant, that vile attorney general, that they intend to try and pull one over on the American people using an executive order. I'm going to start talking about the executive order and then go to conscience. We have to resist any executive order at all costs. You may know that Obama has issued more executive orders in his presidency than all other presidents combined. This man, on many levels, is slowly, steadily strangling liberty out of the American public and setting himself up as, in my opinion, and the opinion of many others, a tin pot tyrant, a despot. Now, it's happening slowly, all right? I mean, it's one little offense at a time, saying, for example, that he refuses to enforce the law, the Defense of Marriage Act, all right? That's a type of tyranny. When you put yourself as a president or executive above the law of the land, you're a tyrant, okay? It might be a low-grade tyrant, like a low-grade fever, but it's tyranny nonetheless. Even if he issues an executive order that most people think, well, that's not that bad. No, that's not the point. You don't surrender the Second Amendment to the president, period, no matter what. But beyond that, and one other thing, that's the stuff that convulsions and even, God forbid, revolution are made of. This man is a fool if he thinks that he is going to use the executive order to disarm Americans in any way. Now, it's not going to be some sweeping thing, but trust me, he's going to try and do something that's very intense, very evil, very iniquitous, and perhaps see what convulsion it creates. God forbid that he then uses the BATF or something. I don't even want to go there. But it's a part of Machiavelli's agenda that you use a crisis or you create a crisis to further your goal. And that's what I want to end on. This nonsense about conscience. When Biden said that there was an awakening of conscience, what he was trying to say was that now everyone is starting to see that we've really got to clamp down on guns. No, Joe. The awakening of conscience that should be happening, and I pray God it is this. Why haven't we armed school teachers? Why are we leaving children in harm's way Monday through Friday in a government fascist box? If there was going to be an awakening of conscience, it should be, let's wake up. The bad guys have guns. They're never going to give them up. We should teach our teachers how to use a gun to protect our children. Or how about an awakening of conscience that, oh my God, there are tyrants in the federal government that want to crush underfoot the freedoms that George Washington and Thomas Jefferson fought for. I'm having a crisis of conscience. The people who have been defending my right to keep and bear arms, they're right. Think of Melinda Herman, people, okay? The woman in Georgia who had a guy coming at her with a crowbar, her and her 2 9-year-old twins. She had a firearm and she shot him. If those teachers had been armed in Sandy Hook, or if some of those people in the Aurora Theater had been armed when that man came in during the Batman movie and started killing people, if somebody had been armed and started firing, so many people wouldn't have died. That's the awakening of conscience that needs to happen, and I hope that you're having one. Because what Biden is talking about is not the awakening of conscience, but the deadening of conscience. I'll be right back, and when we come back in this next segment, I'm going to actually bring out some firearms, real firearms, and give you a quiz. Don't go away.
Children, you must know is that all of the prophets, you think of Muhammad, but before him, Moses. Oh, Moses was talking about Muhammad. You must know the truth.
Friend, you need to get this book. We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you. The flame of Christian ethics is still our best guide. Only on this basis can we reconcile the rights of the individual with the demands of society. Sir Winston Churchill. Welcome back to The Voice of Resistance. It is I, Randall Terry. About a half a dozen of our friends here in the mountains of West Virginia brought us by one gun each. One of their favorites, one that they didn't mind showing off to the public. All right, first of all, any children that are here, if you ever see a gun, don't touch it, period. Until you're old enough and your mommy and daddy have taken you someplace or trained you themselves on how to properly use a firearm, never touch a gun if you're a child. Do you hear me? All right, number two, what's the best safety if you do have a gun? Right here, your finger. If your finger's not on the trigger, the gun's not gonna go off. So if someone hands you a gun, there's several things I'm gonna show you what to do, or if you've got a gun in your pocket, when you pull it out, don't have your finger on the trigger. That's the easiest way when you jerk it out of your pocket to have the gun misfire, or to fire rather, and to hit you in the leg or in the torso, God forbid. All right, next, if someone hands you a gun, is it loaded? If you don't know if a gun is loaded or not, ask them, all right? And if you don't know how to chamber a gun, say, give it back to him and say, would you please show me that that gun is not loaded? So we'll check these really quickly. This is a 22. This is a Glock 9mm. You see that that's empty. This is a 38. That's empty. This is, believe it or not, this very handsome gun is a 22. All right, you can see that that's empty. This is a Remington 870 pump action shotgun, and that's empty. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, the Cadillac, an SK-47. Right there, it's empty. Now, quick quiz, because we're running out of time in this segment. Which of these guns is an assault weapon, and which one is a self-defense weapon? Dun, 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 dun. They're all assault weapons. If somebody is assaulting you with this little 22 with a plastic pistol grip and a little barrel made in Germany, if they pull this weapon on you, it's an assault weapon. Don't kid yourself. And by the way, which of these weapons could be used by your government to tyrannize you, and which one could be used for you to defend against tyranny from your government? Any one of them. The very notion that there's such a thing as an assault weapon is ludicrous. The weapon that's being used to assault you, by definition, is an assault weapon. And the weapon used for your self-defense, by definition, is a self-defense weapon. The real issue is, if you could get a shot of this, Gary, with me and the gun, this looks like a gun that was used in the Army, so therefore it's an assault weapon. People, this little 38, I should say little 38, this little 22 can kill you just as dead as this. And in the hands of the right assassin, this is a far more deadly weapon than this, because this is hard to conceal. If someone's going to get up close to you and kill you, they're going to use a small caliber handgun. So, I've got to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Biden, we're going to talk about these horrific crimes, and what it's all about, Alfie, with these guns. Don't go away. They sacrificed their sons and their daughters to the demons. They poured out innocent blood, the blood of their sons and daughters, whom they sacrificed to the idols of Canaan, and the land was polluted with blood. Friend, you need to get this book. We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy, and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you.
My freedom, I'll keep my guns, try to keep my money and my religion too. Try to keep on working, try to keep on smiling. I will keep my Christian name and y'all can keep the change.
Thank you, Hank Williams Jr. Obama, keep the change. All right, the Second Amendment is not for duck hunting. It is for self-defense, you and your family, against bad guys, and to be able to defend yourself against your government. Let's talk about those two things. If, when James Holmes had gone into that theater and started shooting people in Aurora, Colorado, if one person had been armed with this firearm, there'd be a lot of people who'd be alive right now. If when Adam Lanza went into Sandy Hook and started killing students, if the principal who saw him first and was shot first, if the principal had been armed, Adam Lanza probably would be dead and all those kids would be alive. So if we're going to have a crisis of conscience, that's what it should be. That we have the right to defend ourselves, and if more people were carrying firearms, it'd be a lot safer, more polite society. Second, the Second Amendment is to protect ourselves against our government. That's what Thomas Jefferson said. That's what George Washington said. That's what the founders believed, and it's still true. Don't you know your history? Do you understand that when the shot heard round the world happened with Lexington and Concord, guess what the British Army was doing? They were on their way to Concord to take the guns and to take the gunpowder. They were trying to have gun confiscation, okay? Your freedoms as an American were purchased at the barrel of a gun, and they will be maintained at the barrel of a gun. If you don't want that, then you're choosing slavery. And if you would rather live as a slave, then I recommend you move to Russia and see how you like it. But if you want freedom, it goes hand in hand with this.